Hey guys, what's up? So in this video I want to go over how the COD community or how COD culture has changed in the past decade. I want to start off with the major changes in Call of Duty culture, which is how we view multiplayer, how we view DLC, and how we view campaigns, and how that affected our entire experience with a Call of Duty. A few major points will be game cohesion and the era of game separation. So let's get started. Now, at the height of Call of Duty's obsession and fandom among gamers, Call of Duties were still pretty traditional. By that I mean for the most part each development team was original in its own way, and the campaigns didn't merge in a way that would become blurry or indistinctive over time in past memory. So let's start with why campaigns were so important and vital to sucking players into being fully submerged in the game for the entirety of its season and well beyond. Back in the day, the campaigns meant a lot more to players. As time went on, they added so many bells and whistles and tried way too hard with a lot of the campaigns. They focused so much on mechanics and cinematics, they lost substance. And they couldn't believe with all this amazing next-gen technology and graphics and mechanics that people weren't playing campaigns as much anymore, which led them to believe that obviously the issue was the fans. It can't possibly be us, so we're just not going to make a campaign for, let's say, Black Ops 4. But of course they were proven wrong with the support of the campaign in Modern Warfare 2019. Now, for the original COD formula, the campaign was collective and inclusive with every other aspect of the game. That will, in the end, deepen the average player's submersion into the game. World at War, for example. Every aspect of the game fit the same theme. The theme and the ambiance is very important. It keeps you in that world, never completely taking you out of it no matter which mode you switch to. That feeling you get playing the campaign and that atmosphere and being able to experience that atmosphere in the multiplayer is necessary. And Zombies also held the same atmosphere. It was also in similar locations as in multiplayer in the campaign and set in the same time. It gave us this feeling that Nocturne on Toten, for example, could have been going on at the same moment you were fighting in Berlin with Reznov. Gave us this feeling that if you could just get outside the map in one of the campaign missions and travel far enough, you could stumble upon one of the maps in Nazi Zombies. Maybe it was all set in the same universe, which made it even more fun when you found clues or Easter eggs in the campaign or multiplayer and Zombies maps, kind of tying each world together. Black Ops 1 also had that cohesion between the modes. The multiplayer kept the same gritty feel as the campaign, and the zombie storyline moved to time travel, which ended up with maps that take place during the 60s and interact with places you've got to go in the campaign of Black Ops 1, and actually had a map linking the campaign directly to the Zombies universe, which again just sucked players deeper into the game, immersing themselves into this world in its entirety. Zombies multiplayer campaign, just Black Ops as a whole. Black Ops 2 started creating more and more distance between the campaign multiplayer and the zombies. Each world felt a little disconnected with how much time is in between each section of the campaign. The campaign itself felt disconnected. Not saying it was a bad campaign, but this is the beginning of the separation era, when games started to feel they had a lack of cohesion. Advanced Warfare tried to have cohesion between their campaign and their zombies, but their zombies mode felt like a bad knockoff by the end of its season and couldn't quite grasp the eerie feeling you felt in World at War or Black Ops. Not to mention Advanced Warfare is one of the least like Call of Duties in Call of Duty history. But then we get to Black Ops 3, where the zombie storyline has nothing at all to do with the campaign. The campaign was all over the place, a big hot stinking mess, where they were just trying to do so much with graphics and game mechanics and lacked actual substance. The multiplayer was the best out of all three boost jump Call of Duties because that's just how Treyarch do, but overall, it was by no means up to par with World at War or Black Ops as far as sucking players into its world goes. I was not sucked into the world of Black Ops 3. I just enjoyed the smooth mechanics of the multiplayer, which only took me so far into the world of that game, and into the realm of wonder and enjoyment. Now, Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 had great cohesion between the multiplayer and the campaign, and Modern Warfare 2019 doesn't have as much cohesion between the multiplayer and the campaign. First of all, let's face it, there aren't that many maps per mode in multiplayer. Secondly, the maps that are there aren't necessarily iconic places you remember directly from the campaign, so that cohesion is kind of lost until they add the rest of their maps. And I have complete faith that eventually we will get the same level of cohesion as we got in COD 4, as far as multiplayer maps to campaign goes. But something else to be said is the cohesion Modern Warfare 2 campaign had with its Spec Ops mode. Now, I think the major problem with the Spec Ops mode in Modern Warfare 2019 is they tried to go way too big while trying to achieve something fans actually wanted. For instance, when playing those Spec Ops missions in Modern Warfare 2, we couldn't stop thinking how great it would be to play those missions with at least 2 more players, have a 4-player squad like Zombies. But never in my thought process did I want wider landscapes for those missions. Never in my thought process did I want bigger gaps or pauses of nothings or more MacGuffins in those missions. Nowhere in that thought process did we want any other changes or differences in those missions and how they felt besides the number of players we could play with in that mission. And I totally get trying to, go big or go home. But in doing so, it created a less intimate experience with the Spec Ops mission. And it didn't feel like fun or like some type of challenge that we're trying to overcome in the game. It just ended up feeling more or less like work. And I do believe there's a difference between a game that feels like it's a challenge and a game that just feels like work. From what I've seen over the past decade and beyond with Call of Duty, is when it comes to missions, there is such a thing as too much and too big at one time. When it comes to campaigns, there is such a thing as too long, and sometimes they focus too much on the worry if it's going to be too short that they don't think enough about if the campaign is going to be too long. There is a sweet spot for the length of the campaign and how much you should do with the campaign. There is a sweet spot between too simple and just outside the edge of the ability to completely comprehend the campaign. The farther we get into the world of graphics, the more advances we make, the more we feel we have to make things extra long with what we are given. We feel we have to do more because we have the ability to do so. And we are finally now learning the lesson that sometimes less is more. For example, would Modern Warfare 2019 have benefited more if it had put its focus on releasing the game with standard multiplayer modes with a list of 14 plus maps to play on, and focus on releasing Ground War and those bigger maps later on as downloads with, say, Season 1 or Season 2? Maybe. I'm sure they had their reasons for doing it the way they did. A lot of that reasoning, though, from my perspective, seems to be just straight ambition and wanting to get as much of what they've been working on as a whole out at once. And personally, I do think Ground War's great. I don't play it that much, even when I do play Modern Warfare, but some of the funnest nights with friends in recent memory have been on Ground War. But personally, I believe that if they didn't have Ground War at all in the game, and they put all of their focus into making and releasing regular multiplayer maps as their priority, having more of those maps sooner readily available from the start, only focusing on Spec Ops multiplayer, safe survival, and campaign. I think in the end it would have saved a lot more grief and could have possibly avoided the repelling of players that we are seeing right now. Now, I'm not saying at all that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019's days are numbered, because once other content comes out, and they have all the time to fix and balance everything, and gets towards the end of all the seasons, and we see the game in pretty much its entirety, I'm sure it's going to be great and fantastic. They're just kind of pioneering their way through this new era of Call of Duty. I'm just making the point in the context of the most recent Call of Duty that less can be more. But I think the biggest challenge being faced right now is how can Call of Duty stay with the parameters of the recipe that they know works, basically the limits of complexity, the limits of the length of the campaign, kind of cookie cutter model of Call of Duty, and still have room for creativity each year without stretching outside of that recipe they know works. Right now, what they're doing is they're going back to a franchise that is familiar, that will bring people in, while also trying to go far outside the original recipe while still trying to achieve that original feeling and achieve the true spirit of the classic Call of Duties, if that makes any sense to you. That's just how I see it and how I understand it, and I in no way think they're wrong to try this. But I also think, for instance, we should keep remastering older Call of Duties to try to even have better insight to what grew the COD fascination, fandom, and success, while that culture is actively functioning in the petri dish we call the Call of Duty community, to be able to observe it in real time versus in memory. And then better apply these notes of how much we don't have to do to later CODs in order to properly utilize resources. But while we're here, let's get into DLC. Now, a lot of us feel that back in the day, the game was burgers, fries, and a soda, and DLC was toys and a shake. But after a while, games started to feel as if they were a meat patty and some lettuce and a drink, and then DLC was the buns, the ketchup, tomato, and the fries. Even if those games had a larger file, even if they were technically bigger than previous games, the DLC would sometimes feel like it was just finishing off something that was unfinished. A game with a much smaller game file, or a smaller base game, technically smaller all around, felt more complete on its release than a base game with a lot more data. And I do believe this comes back to cohesion, because if there's no cohesion between everything in the game linking it all together, it does feel like something is missing or it is unfinished. And the DLC may not feel like it's linked to anything, let alone one cohesive story. It may feel like it's just trying to fill in the blanks instead of being an addition to something that's already complete. When you play a campaign that's action-packed, has substance, while the same time can arguably be seen as short, sweet, and to the point, like World at War, for example, you still feel completed at the end. It had a fulfilling ending. it had closure, and it created a world and a feeling, and enough maps came with the game to make you more than content. And you could also play the campaign over and over again in the co-op mode. You also had zombies. It was enough to keep you going for a long time, so it felt like a complete game that would sustain me for the rest of the year. And then you add DLC on top of that. But if you can't achieve that content feeling with fans with your base game, some tend to go the route of quantity over quality and just release a shit ton of content to hopefully negate fans feeling as if it's unfinished content, or not enough content. But either way, you're still going to add to that problem without solving it. And when those failed tactics are so painfully obvious, it's just another thing distracting people and taking them out of that world of the campaign or that particular Call of Duty. The world that particular Call of Duty has created. They are no longer immersed in it. It takes them out of the story in the same way, in the same effect of someone's phone going off during a very interesting play. Something else that takes you out of that immersion is crazy outfits and crazy camos and crazy gun variants. If it doesn't fit the theme, if it doesn't stay in line with something you could get or operate within the campaign, and I'm not talking about buying a suit for your character to wear in the campaign. I'm saying if you add things to the game that wouldn't fit in the baseline campaign as is, it will take people out of the world of that Call of Duty as a whole, whether it's multiplayer or whatever. So just to reiterate, less is more. Know the limits. Know the minimums. Game mode cohesion is important to the world you create and is vital to how much you want the player to be obsessed with said world you've created. And trying to do too much can leave players disillusioned, meaning that all of that hard work in creating such a beautiful world means nothing if you also add or do something that sucks players out of that illusion. Immersion isn't necessarily how big you can make a map. You can create better intimacy with something as simple as smaller spaces. If the fans asked for the ability to play with more friends, it doesn't necessarily mean that he wants a bigger space to do it in. Look, there's just a lot to go over here, but only if you can pick up what I'm putting down. Maybe I don't make as much sense as I feel I do, but if this jives with you, if you get it, comment down below, keep the conversation going, and share this video. Get this word out there. This is something that needs to be talked about. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep up with all the commentary and Call of Duty news as things should be appearing in the next few months. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.